There had always been an argument that Bitcoin is a good sort of hedge against global turmoil, against central banks, et cetera. It seems to be coming to fruition right now.
Trade wars, currency wars, global sanctions. We finally have a global backdrop that is going to facilitate what I believe will be the most important move in Bitcoin's history. We've had the 10 years of adolescence from its early youth into the 2017 bull run. Then we had a huge bear market, the longest in history. We're seeing what I can only describe as the perfect confluence of factors for Bitcoin to rise to prominence on a global scale.
Institutions have spent decades looking for non-correlated assets that they can use as a diversification in their portfolio. We've been banging the drum for over a year now, saying that this is a non-correlated asymmetric asset. If you look at times of global instability, like in May, where we're kind of lobbying tariff threats and the trade wars are raging on, Bitcoin's up 55%. It's got a negative correlation, so it was negative 0.9 to S&P, negative 0.8 to gold. And I think that we're going to continue to see that play out, where there's people around the world that are electing to put their wealth into something that is controlled by software and cannot be manipulated by a single country or politician.
We have a much publicized trade war with China. We have a new emerging currency war with China. And we've now seen for the first time over the last weekend that China's currency devaluation is having a drastic effect on its value. And from that, we can only derive that the world's most scarce, non-correlated, independent asset that's not controlled by a single politician or government is going to be the direct target of potentially hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars of new capital in the crypto markets. If you're excited for this video and you're liking it so far, do me a favor and go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. What are you waiting for? What we're going to describe today is the confluence of factors that are driving this current renewed energy in the Bitcoin price as we find ourselves thousands of dollars up in price action since just a few days ago. And of course, we can describe what it would look like if we were to break through the current resistance set at about $14,000 from our most recent bull run in late June. Without any further ado, let's jump into it and discuss all of the amazing global factors that are influencing the current rise in the Bitcoin price and the reasons why I believe Bitcoin will continue to rise and rise over the coming years and decades. First and foremost, we have a renewed weakness in the Chinese yuan. Now, in China, there's $27 trillion in bank deposits or something roughly around that mark. And for that reason, there is a ton of potential outflow that could come from the Chinese yuan into other assets. Now, given the trade war between the US and China, and of course, the ongoing difficulties of getting capital out of China from traditional methods, I think that it's a reasonable suspicion that there could be some, even if it's a trace amount, less than 1%, of outflows of capital from the Chinese yuan into other assets at more than 7-to-1 ratio to the US dollars for the first time in a decade. Now, that is a psychological number for sure, but what it's having is a dramatic effect on Bitcoin.
When we see, for instance, in the oil markets, we see a drone strike in Iran or something like that, right? You have sort of a bump in the price of oil, and that's sort of a crude premium that's built in. Are we seeing a premium built into the price of Bitcoin with this most recent rise based on the threat of a currency war? How much is that premium, do you think?
Yeah, so what you have to remember is we've seen this play out before, right? In countries like Venezuela, Iran, Argentina, et cetera, where the currency begins to fail or there's issues, we do see large upticks in volume where people are electing to take their wealth out of those currencies, put them into Bitcoin. They're small countries, though. Now we're seeing this play out in one of the largest economies in the world. And so with $27 trillion of deposits in the Chinese banks, 1% of that moves, that would double the market cap of crypto.
We all know that it doesn't take that much from a global perspective to move the price of Bitcoin. And you're seeing now, for the first time, this happening to a real global superpower. We've seen this happen with Venezuela. We've seen this happen with Zimbabwe. And we'll talk about Venezuela in a few minutes. But when hyperinflation occurs, or when dramatic inflation occurs, most people will try to turn to other assets. Now, in Venezuela, as their hyperinflation has continued, we can see that there has been an almost unstoppable exponential growth in the volume of Bitcoin traded there on a daily basis. I mean, you can see right here, here's the local Bitcoin's volume in Venezuelan Bolivar. And you can see over the past few years, the volume has been absolutely astronomical. Now, you have to account for some inflation here as the Venezuelan Bolivar has continued to hyperinflate dramatically. But nonetheless, you can see the trend here is explosive and it's up and to the right. We can see this happen with any country that would choose to hyperinflate or devalue their own currencies. And in times of global economic weakness, as we've covered on our previous videos, we are potentially facing a time where quantitative easing on a global scale will become quite popular. Bigger and bigger fences emerging on a global scale, we can see the need for an international non-correlated asset. Of course, now, this is when this narrative is starting to really play out, and that's why right now might be one of the most exciting times in Bitcoin's history. We can see here that we've been consolidating around a sort of symmetrical triangle formation over the past few days. Again, I don't proclaim to be the most sophisticated chart analyst, but we know we've been consolidating around a triangle formation, bouncing between the highs of 14,000 and the lows of, the mid 9,000s. And here we can see, based on this chart analysis, that we have broken out to the upside. We know that there's not a lot of resistance on the way back to a new all-time high of 20,000. We just spent very little time between $10,000 and $20,000. So to see us get back there from a charting perspective, to me, isn't that crazy? And of course, once we do, the speculation as to how high Bitcoin can go will become a global FOMO, a global fever. But even more to this effect, we have global stocks tumbling, with the Dow Jones and NASDAQ falling by 2.9 and 3.4% respectively. We have investors waking up to Bitcoin as a hedge, as we've heard described by Anthony Pompliano. We have Bitcoin, which profits from these fiat currency blame games as the US and China continue to ramp up their trade war and currency wars. This is a perfect opportunity, as we've just discussed with JP Morgan, saying that the US dollar has peaked essentially in its global prominence. And as this war for a leading asset globally starts to erupt, we believe, just like Anthony Pompliano, that people will continue to turn to math and science and code over politics and the very, very flawed human psychology. This, as we have word that North Korea has stolen $2 billion in cryptocurrency. I mean, it's clear that this asset has an independent value, and that more and more as countries get isolated by the world, like Iran and North Korea, as countries continue to have wars with their currencies, and those currencies become less and less value because of them, we can see that Bitcoin's value, Bitcoin's proposition, and the whole narrative of Bitcoin as a global hedge, a global reserve asset, continues to prove out, and this time its scale will be like never before. And it's not just the previous news of the Fidelities getting into crypto, the physically settled Bitcoin futures, the Starbucks second layer payment networks, the Intercontinental Exchange, parent of the New York Stock Exchange, opening up Bitcoin futures. We also have the likes of MasterCard opening up cryptocurrency wallet projects, not just for their own transfer systems, but understanding that transferring Bitcoin and holding cryptocurrencies is part of the future and that they want to be a part of that. You can see even at the Federal Reserve level, where the US Fed is launching a real-time payment settlement layer, a real-time payment system. Obviously, this is a direct impact of the cryptocurrency movement, which has for a long time put forward the notion that real-time reliable payments that can be made at any time, anywhere, are a basic right that you should have anywhere in the world, that any human should have. And now you're seeing a reaction by the US Federal Reserve. It's all very, very bullish and shows it's all extremely bullish and shows the true influence of cryptocurrency in our everyday lives. Again, what you see here is a chart of Bitcoin nearing its $1 billionth charged in transaction fees, meaning the industry of upholding the Bitcoin network, of mining, is becoming a $1 billion industry that is behind this $100 billion market cap asset. So you're seeing that the desire to uphold this network has a tremendous amount of return. And that is precisely why people will continue to do it, and precisely why the network itself will continue to expand dramatically as the price grows. This is not just about the price of the coin. This is about the value of the entire network. And we're seeing the investments in that network continue to grow exponentially, dramatically. And that is what is going to continue to push the price, is the security and the reliability of this non-correlated, tamper-proof global asset. So as we find ourselves moving upward again with strength in the Bitcoin price, this time with the backdrop of dramatic global shifts, what we can see is Bitcoin being supported by global trends in a very powerful way. Just like the video I made a few days ago that showed that the US might be potentially looking at a recession in the next few months to years. Just like we could be looking at quantitative easing, now we're looking at the peak of the US dollar, according to JP Morgan. We're looking at currency wars. We're looking at trade wars. We're looking at sanctions on a global level, the rise of nationalism. All of these things contribute dramatically to the Bitcoin price growing, Bitcoin's value as a global reserve asset. Again, people will continue to trust code. People will continue to trust algorithms and machines over the very flawed psychology of other humans. And that is why we believe Bitcoin is entering potentially its very first mature bull run, where it's being supported by regulation, it's being supported by institutions, it's being supported by the big powers that be, and this could lift it to incredible heights. And I personally believe we could be looking at a six-figure Bitcoin within the next year to year and a half. I do believe that if this continues, if we continue to break out of this pattern, that we could be looking at new all-time highs this year. And I'm just curious, have you guys bought your Bitcoin? Are you guys reinvesting? Are you guys just hodling? Let me know. Have you had any new Bitcoin buys in 2019? Have you just been sitting on the sidelines, hoping that your crypto portfolio comes back to its prior prominence? Are you a newbie to this space? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm very curious. Now, if you liked this video, if you got value from it, I'd really appreciate it if you threw a like on this video. It's free, it's easy for you to do, and it really helps the channel. And of course, if you're new to the channel, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button. I'm Elio Trades, you're watching FUD TV, and as usual, I will see you very soon on the next episode.